I guess hypothetically, how could this even happen? Maybe that's a good place to start. Blizzard has recently been bought out. It's just become public knowledge that they are losing yet more players. I think they've dipped down under, was it 100 million players over across their franchises for the first time? Something like that. Blizzard are losing steam. Microsoft might not be as attached to certain IPs as Blizzard are. And maybe in the latest WoW expansion, they killed off Jaina Proudmoore because they wanted to put someone new in her place. She might already be dead. I don't follow WoW lore that closely. I'm not a WoW player. Let's then say that because Reynad is an ex-Hearthstone pro, a big Hearthstone player, maybe Microsoft approach him, maybe he approaches Microsoft, or maybe it becomes a joint spin-off. Maybe something bizarre gets added into World of Warcraft, and we get the licensing rights to add Jaina Proudmoore, the Mage of Hearthstone, into the Bazaar as a hero. What does that mean for the game? What will be the result of that? First of all, those news stories would be massive, right? That's kind of the point of these hypotheticallys. They're going to be huge news stories. So that's going to drive a lot of promotion to the channel, and to the to the game. A lot of World of Warcraft players, I feel, would move over, or at least try out the game, try out Jaina in this new game, see if they can be like the edgy Hearthstone World of Warcraft player in this bizarre world, and just one-trick Jaina. You'd get people from Hearthstone, of course, moving across, but we've hoped to have already absorbed a decent chunk of that. But it would entice a second wave of Hearthstone players to check out the Bazaar. Maybe there is... This happens with a lot of games, right? Maybe the Bazaar gets something wrong at launch. We've most recently seen from Multiverses, they still don't have ranked. We've seen from Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap. Yeah, it's called Marvel Snap. It still doesn't exist in 90% of the world. Already lost all of its steam. Multiverses, it's still got that steam, but they need to do something about ranked soon. If the Bazaar is missing something on launch, if they fuck up the crypto thing at launch, for example, and they're just tarnished with this horrible brush, and no Hearthstone players end up staying, or most of them don't even end up trying the game, this would be that second wave that like Artifact 2.0 was supposed to have, but there was no weight behind Artifact 2.0, right? From way back in my Artificers Guild days. Artifact 2.0 was just the developers that had let us down time and time again, saying we're trying something new. At that point, you've lost my interest. However, if you push a major update and then later, with Artifact 2, maybe they, add Marvel's Black Widow as a hero. I don't know. That wouldn't entice me back to play, but maybe it would entice someone back to play. Smite have done this very effectively. If you don't already know, we have another channel called First Blood Greg that covers loads of MOBA stuff. MOBAs is like my second love. Smite have done this very, very effectively. Their somewhat dying game, injected with life, with an Avatar crossover, with a Transformers crossover, with a crossover with OTK, Asmongold, Mizkif, that lot. They've injected so much more life into the game, and they did it without really changing too much about how the game played. They definitely improved how the game played like a season before that. Things were starting to get a little bit stale. They mixed things up. They made the gameplay more enticing and more fun to play. And then they do these crossovers that bring in swathes of old traffic and new traffic who are looking to play the game. They hear about the game through a friend, or maybe they played the game back in the day and there's this new thing come out for an IP they love and they try it out again. That could happen to the Bazaar. And this type of thing, if we bought the license to Jaina and put Jaina in the game, that would bring this second wave of traffic. I really, really think in the modern gaming world, that is how you entice people back to try your game if you've already failed. Not even if you've already failed, but if you're sort of slowly dying, if you're needing a second injection, You're not just going to get it by saying, we made the game better, because no one's listening. But if you say, hey, your favorite IP is in my game now, maybe they'll listen, try it out, and then they'll realize they actually do like it. Similar thing happened with me with Gwent recently. I retried Gwent because they had a seasonal event where you got to pick Shani, Triss, or Yen, and I am a huge Team Triss advocate. So I went back and played Gwent for an entire season just so I could not only win with Team Triss, but then also unlock the shit for the other two as well. And now Renfri's in the game, so I'm going to be playing through Gwent again just to get Renfri. I don't particularly love playing Gwent at the moment. I have a couple of decks I have to play. I basically have a vampire deck that I have to play, and that's all I can. Because it is so difficult to get new cards in that game. But I want the cool IP swag. So, enough about IP swag and what the Bazaar would benefit from Jaina Proudmoore being in the Bazaar. What would Jaina Proudmoore be in the Bazaar? She is a mage, so we're now introducing magic. It wasn't necessarily a magical society, but there was already this sort of spacey, magic-y bullshit going on. So she could go one of a couple of ways. The first way, the most obvious way, and the way I think I'm going to go with, is just Jaina is magically transported into this world and has all of her magic, right? The second way is Jaina transports into this world, and she's seen as this like archaic, ancient sorcerer, and her magic is linked to a past, right? Maybe it's a distant civilization, because the Bazaar is intergalactic. And third and finally, and the one I definitely don't think I'm going to do, but could happen, although I wouldn't recommend it, is you completely butcher the original IP and just make her more basey or whatever. Theming. I think I have locked down. I think we're just going to stick with traditional Jaina, maybe add a little bit of that, like, her home planet is in a distant land and she's bounced across space and she's now here at the Bazaar. The first thing we come across, like the most important thing in Hearthstone, the thing that gives your character its sort of immediate association, is that hero power. We have hero powers in the Bazaar, they're called hero skills, but they aren't quite the same. Hero skills, you start with none, and you buy them as you go through the game. The first ones you can get are free, then they cost 4 gold, then 8 gold. It's a bit of an investment, right? And you can have up to 4 of them, which means you can have hero powers or hero skills that work together, which means they're typically not as potent or as strong as a Hearthstone hero power. They're dialed back a little bit, and they need to cover a bunch of different options. So if Fire Blast, Jaina's hero power, was like our hero skill, we'd have a bunch of just fireball type hero skills. Like there's going to be at least like 2 figures worth of hero skills for each character. Probably much more, but that's just what we've seen so far. So what am I thinking in terms of Fire Blast? Where do we fit that in? That might have to be... You know what? I mean, all of her fire stuff has to be an archetype, right? Do we go with the different types of magic for her archetypes? Do we go with... Yeah, so we've got, like, freeze. I mean, freeze is already a thing. Secrets can definitely be an archetype. We have fire damage for archetype. Maybe that's what we're going to have to go off of? The different elements? We have the arcane. I guess, yeah, we've got fire, frost, and arcane, right? We already have the archetypes baked in. Do we go fire, frost, arcane? I feel like we kind of have to. You know what? I've missed a trick. The unique mechanic of each class, right? I'm thinking about Pygmalion because we've just seen a bunch of Pygmalion hero skills. But actually, if I think about other classes, Jules, she feeds people with joy. That's unlike any other class. Dell, she has her own stat. It's altitude. She like has a stat that she manages. Dooley has this like central item, the core, that you work off either side. I've missed a trick here. Fire Blast, the whole thing Jaina is about, this just nuking fire damage, this obliteration, this hugely powerful arsenal of spells, has to be her unique mechanic. Now, do we... I think that there's a couple of there's two very interesting things we could do here. I like both of them, and maybe I'll leave it up to you guys which we do. The first one is a stat kind of like altitude, that as you deal damage, you go up in sort of temperature, or you grow in arcane power, and this number just goes up and up and up, helping you increase more damage, or helping you increase your damage rather. So that every time you do like a damage, you get one of these stacks. And then there'll be certain items that say, you know, at X level of, so at 50 or more fire, double damage, or do an extra 10 damage, or something, right? So that she is this growing ball of fire. The other thing I liked that I think I'm going to go with as my sort of hypothetical is to have the unique mechanic of mana actually add a Hearthstone mana into the Bazaar as a unique mechanic. I think this would be really interesting, and how I'd see it working is maybe a little bit like altitude. You have ways of gaining mana, so like they'd be very limited though. So you'd have a mana stat, and it would start at, let's say it start at 10, because that's the maximum mana you get in Hearthstone, right? Your maximum mana starts at 10. During a fight, all of your cards on your board, all of your items on your board, they would cost different levels of mana to activate. And maybe you have a mana generation. Maybe it's not that you have, maybe you don't start with 10 mana, maybe you start with 2 mana per second, right? Maybe you don't start with anything. Maybe there are just some early items that have mana per second on them. And then you find a hero's skill that has mana per second. Or maybe, okay, here we go. One of your hero skills is taken up by a mana per second generation skill that levels as you go through the game. So maybe it gives you mana per second equal to the highest value item you have. Something like that, right? Very, very hypothetical. All of your items would be costing mana, so you'd be gaining mana per second, and then mana would get accounted from that. So they need items that give you more mana. Items that could be like, you have to forgive me, I have not played Hearthstone in a long, long time. Arcane Intellect, that's the one I was looking for. I knew it was in this list, and I was just being dumb. Arcane Intellect would be a huge sort of generation of mana, right? And then Fireball would cost loads of mana. So she would have this really interesting secondary stat that you would have to balance. And you'd probably have to go to some NPC fights during the day to test your build, to see, okay, I added a Flame Strike to my board. That spell is doing a crazy amount of damage, but it's also costing me a lot of mana. I don't know if I have enough mana to go into the final fight with this. So let me check this against NPC, see how well I do. You go up against the NPC and you see within seconds you're at 0 mana. And some of your items are like they fully charge and then they just wait at maximum charge until they have enough mana to activate. Or maybe they just completely skip. Maybe it's that detrimental. So you think, okay, I definitely need to get some more mana, or I need to sell something that's using mana that I don't need anymore. I think that'll be a very, very interesting balance, and it would definitely bring out the Hearthstone element. We are then just looking to her cards to make sure we get those aspects of who Jaina is. I think that's fairly easy. I think we do add a new archetype. We add the spell archetype. We absolutely have to add the spell archetype. Or like scroll, maybe, but I'm thinking spell. And then there are two different like play types or play styles that I want to make sure we can do, right? Just like with Pygmalion, you can go shields, you can go health, or health regen and healing, or you can go damage with strength. Jaina, like Pygmalion, has to be able to be a freeze mage. So Frozen or freeze is a mechanic in the Bazaar. Does much the same as it does in any other game. It hits a enemy item and that stops charging. That's how it works in the Bazaar anyway. It's basically a stalling mechanic. It freezes them out, it means they can't do things. 100%, 200%. Jaina will have a bunch of cards that help her do freezing and stall out the enemy. Along with freezing, she is going to need items that can make sure she survives the sandstorm. I'm thinking more along the lines of very low levels of shielding that can be applied regularly. Maybe some higher level shielding like Ice Barrier or something. And then maybe some just straight up immunity frames. There is already one in the game with Stell. We can probably have another one in the game here. And maybe it can be Counterspell, who knows? Some sort of immunity frame that we can add in so that she can survive the sandstorm and actually beat out the person that she is freezing. The other one, of course, is going to be spells. The other type, of course, is going to be damage through fire-based spells. We're going to have Fireball, Flame Strike, Firebolt, everything. We don't really have allies in the game so much, so like adding dragons won't necessarily be like what we're after. But adding a dragon scale robe or something, right? That's based off one of the Hearthstone dragons that Jaina interacts with. That could work. The sort of components and stuff you would get from some of the minions that Jaina has, you can definitely add wands or staves or robes of important mages that are part of Jaina's posse. They can definitely be added into the game. And yeah, I think that kind of works. I like this mana system, the spell archetype. We have these two very obvious ways of playing Jaina. You can play a freeze mage, you can play a straight damage mage. And as a straight damage mage, with like, if you're able to generate enough mana, maybe she can go toe-to-toe with someone like Vanessa. I would love to see Vanessa versus Jaina, full like revolver, like octopus spam damage Vanessa versus Fireball, Flame Strike, mana generation Jaina. That would be cool. That would be hype. So, hypothetically, if Jaina bought the rights to Hearthstone, or more specifically Jaina Proudmoore, that's what I think it would look like in the Bazaar. And I think it would be pretty cool. Let me know if you had any other ideas of what you would do with Jaina, and let me know if there are other hypotheticals you want me to think about. If you're interested in how a freeze mage in the Bazaar might work, even if Jaina never makes it to our game, then we have an entire video going over the freeze mage archetype for Pygmalion in this video right here.